Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. I'm grateful to the Center for Excellence in Journalism at the Institute of Business Administration, Karachi, for inviting me here this afternoon. I'm sure all the fireworks have already happened in the last 2 days of deliberations and discussions. And in any case, if I remember my quotations correctly, it was Daniel Boorstin who said that a sermon is less newsworthy than a debate. And of course, a debate is far less newsworthy than a riot. So the riot has already happened, I'm certain, so you are left with my sermon, which is of course much less newsworthy. I just wanted to make a brief remarks on truth Pakistani style. And since the very sizzling topic of these discussions over the last 2 days, what is the truth Pakistani style? And how is the media reporting it? Is the media successful in reporting it? But I'll begin once again by rehashing a very old complaint, as old as March 1805 in Thomas Jefferson's second inaugural address. And what he said then in March 1805 are my feelings about the PMLN government of 2013 to 18. And Jefferson made the same complaint that I have, that our government was attacked, degraded, delegitimized by an incessant and unrelenting media onslaught, which was not organic. So these inorganic media onslaughts that we faced between 2013 and 18, which had the consequence of not only delegitimizing the elected government of a particular political party, but I will submit very humbly that it tried to delegitimize democracy and constitutional law itself. And the consequence of that delegitimization, which occurred not just through the media, but also through the judiciary. It was a tool of that, the judiciary at that time was a tool of that delegitimization, unfortunately. And we reached then, of course, the elections of 2018, which were manipulated all ends up, far before, during, after polling, and then again, if you will excuse my polemic point of view, into a neo-fascist government, which had the facade of coming into office after an election, but had very little to do with an election. And the consequence of that government, again, in turn, was, not surprisingly, fascism. So I'm very fond of quoting, and I just quoted 3 days ago, this couplet by Allama Iqbal on television, who said that Zamana apne hawadis chupa nahi sakta, Zamana apne hawadis chupa nahi sakta, Tera hijab hai kalbo nazar ki napaki. We can't see what is happening in front of us because of our own mala fide, our bad faith, and that blinds us. Maybe our political affiliation blinds us, to seeing what events are occurring, and we call them hawadis. But of course it wasn't an accident that the RTS system broke down on the night of 25th of July 2018. It wasn't an accident. Even before that, that an elected Prime Minister was disqualified on a salary that he had not taken, and that untaken salary had been not accidentally declared an asset, and that Prime Minister, whose name is Nawaz Sharif, was disqualified. So we might just hate Nawaz Sharif and we say, yay, we are so happy he was disqualified. But the truth is that it was not done legitimately. So we might, there is a whole series of events. Of course, my favorite event in that dark days of fascism was, of course, the 15 kilogram of heroin foisted upon Rana Sanaullah, who is now the country's interior minister. But these are all debates for another day. What we are here gathered this afternoon to discuss, of course, is how the media is reporting all this, and how is the new landscape of 24/7 live social media interaction that is occurring. And we really don't know how that is going to play out. One thing that we do know, because that has already happened in the United States and other advanced Western countries, is that social media has, to my mind, nearly erased the line between truth and lies. This is the extreme battlefront that, in my view, we face. This is the extreme reporting. That here is something in which facts, reality is manufactured 24 hours a day, and if you have sufficient resources and manpower, you can define reality. Or at least, as President Obama said in a recent speech at Stanford, a very erudite and well worth listening to speech, is that the public arena is flooded so completely with sewage that you can't see what is going on. ज़माने के हवादिस को आप सोशल मीडिया के जोर से छुपा देते हैं, उसको बल्कि छुपाना क्या है, उसको डबो देते हैं अपने झूठ में. अब वो झूठ जो है वो यहाँ भी लिखा हुआ है कि भी झूठ वो इंस्टाग्राम पे भी है, वो टिकटॉक पे भी है, वो ट्विटर पे भी है. The word he used was to flood the public arena with lies, and you are unable to see the truth wherever it is standing. So it is completely buried and overwhelmed. तो हमारे सामने, ladies and gentlemen, ये challenge है कि जब ये जो, and it is not, again ये भी हादसा नहीं है कि अब से कुछ महीने पहले तक जो हुक्मरान जमात थी वो अपने आप को सुनामी कहती थी, वो झूठ की सुनामी भी थी ना जी, was to flood the public arena with its lies and with its points of view, most of which I would very humbly suggest have turned out to be lies. And if I may say so, getting some strength from the head of this institution, Mr. Zaidi, is that media has failed to guide and inform the Pakistani public, both in English and Urdu languages, the kind of lies we have been subjected to. And in so often, the media acts as a megaphone for those lies. Occasionally, those lies can originate from my party also, I will admit to that. But mostly, this complete erasure of this line between truth and lies has put us in a very difficult position. And maybe it's an exaggeration to say so, but I do submit to it. and I agree to it, that this erasure of the line between truth and lies is endangering democracy worldwide. But in this country, where democracy is barely a one-leaf plant trying to peep out of the soil, here that plant is crushed every so often. And the new tools at the disposal of the powerful, those who have the resources, the wherewithal, can completely overwhelm the truth, which is very rarely simple. Truth is usually complex, requires nuance. And media over hundreds of years has not been very successful across the world. But here the challenge is greater, because when we try to define reality and truth in this country, the media's challenges are immense. They are as immense as challenges for those of us who are elected representatives, or who are in government, or in parliament, because there are certain truths that cannot be said in this country. That is a fact. Balochistan is one such truth. What is the truth in Balochistan? I ask you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still trying to find that one out. We have had any number of foreign journalists kicked out of Balochistan because they were trying to do something about that. So what is happening in Balochistan? I wish I knew. I wish the media would tell me. Occasionally one does get reports by brave journalists, and I will come to that in a minute, from Balochistan, who have visited, who live there, who report from there. But I would admit to ignorance. I will confess to ignorance about Balochistan. Where I was just 48 hours ago in Gwadar, and trying to determine what is the population of Gwadar, nearly less than 100,000, actually thinking about Gwadar. I don't know. I wish I did. I wish media would report that. Similarly, another large black hole in the truth about Pakistan is what happened in Pakistan in the aftermath of 9/11. That whole chapter of our history of cooperation with Western powers in the war on terror. There is a very large gap, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever books that have been written, articles that have been written by Western journalists and Western authors. So someone like me is forced to read the Americans' point of view about what happened in my country and what was the extent of our cooperation. So that's another frontier of extreme reporting that we still have not completely visited, let alone conquered. And of course, the whole very thorny and sensitive subject of civil-military relations in this country, and how that impacts, since we are at IBA, how the nature of civil-military relations impacts the political economy of this country. What are the ways in which it has distorted our economy and our economic decision-making. So these are just issues to which so far I have not been able to find answers, and I always look to you, ladies and gentlemen, to at least provide me a guidepost toward the truth, that, go that side. Truth is that side. But any extreme reporting is an endeavor that requires courage, ladies and gentlemen. And here I do want to mention that in Pakistan we have been lucky and very fortunate to have, in the darkest eras, and the last 4 years were one of those eras. In the darkest eras, there have been courageous men and women, journalists, who have, in however small or large capacity, tried to express the truth. And they have suffered for it. Journalists have been shot in broad daylight, like Absar Alam in Islamabad. I mean, why was Absar shot? I would very much like to know. Maybe we have a better idea why Matiullah Jan was kidnapped. But then there are a series of journalists who were deprived of their livelihoods and their families' economic security. They were kicked out of their jobs. They were forced out of electronic media, prevented from doing their shows. But we are fortunate that they have stuck to their belief of reporting whatever they could. Which, of course, brings me to another dark side of extreme reporting and media, is how the ownership of media outlets distorts reporting in this country. That's another frontier for young men and women to cross. Because it is something that is systematic, and for those with sharper eyes and minds than I have, they can sense it on their newspapers and television screens every single day. It's there for us to decipher, literally, in our daily consumption of the media. So one thought that technology, in terms of social media, which has made the transmission of information so painless and so ubiquitous, seems to have made reaching the truth even more onerous and difficult. Because previously it was just sort of certain government barriers or systematic economic barriers. Now the fact that anyone who is trying to put out however benign version of reality must face the prospect of being overwhelmed and buried and flooded with untruth. So it's become more difficult for the general population. It's become difficult for policymakers. I fully expect that in these 2 days of deliberations, better minds than mine have pondered these subjects and given us some guidelines. But I will confess to continued ignorance of the subject. With thanks to Ms. Shamsi, who very kindly invited me, I sent her a quotation by Francis Bacon, with which I will end my remarks. And Bacon here, many hundreds of years ago, is trying to paraphrase the Bible. So I'll just set out the context. Pontius Pilate was the governor of Jerusalem who crucified Jesus. So Bacon, Francis Bacon, he says, "What is truth?" asked jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. I would not stay for an answer either. Pakistan Pindabad. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.